When you sit down at your computer to ask an AI for a business recommendation, there's this like implicit expectation that you're tapping into the infinite objective wisdom of the entire internet.
Oh, absolutely. You assume it's completely impartial.
Right. I mean, you type a prompt into ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity. Maybe you're looking for a top-tier design agency or a specialized commercial solicitor.
Or even just a highly rated local contractor for your house.
Exactly. And the AI generates this beautifully formatted, highly confident list of businesses for you. But if you do this often enough, if you really pay attention to the outputs, you start to notice something peculiar.
It's almost like a glitch in the matrix.
Yes, you start seeing the exact same names popping up over and over again, and it really makes you wonder, why them?
Out of all the incredibly competent businesses out there.
Right. Why does the AI seem to have this handful of absolute favorites while their equally skilled competitors just remain totally invisible?
It's a brilliant observation, honestly. And it highlights a fundamental misunderstanding of how these systems actually operate.
Because we tend to view these large language models as like objective discerning judges, right?
Yeah, we think they weigh every real-world option equally and just handpick the absolute best based on merit. But that is not what is happening at all.
I mean, looking at the stack of sources for today's deep dive, we've got AI developer documentation on knowledge graphs, recent SEO research papers, and technical teardowns of search architectures.
That's a lot of dense material, yeah.
It is. But our mission today is to look right under the hood of these AI recommendation engines. We want to understand how they actually perceive the business world.
Because we are dealing with mathematical probability here, not human judgment.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if the machine isn't picking the quote-unquote best in the traditional sense, what exactly is it doing when I ask it for a recommendation?
Well, to understand that, we have to recognize that this repeated visibility is absolutely not random. Not at all.
Right.
When an AI recommends a specific business time and time again, it's because the system has developed incredibly strong, hardwired mathematical associations.
Between that specific business and the topic you're asking about, right?
Exactly. And those associations are forged entirely by patterns. The AI is looking at vector patterns in its massive training data.
And semantic patterns in the live sources it retrieves when you actually ask the question.
Spot on. So it's reading the web, yes, but it is not reading it the way you or I do.
Right. We really need to look at how the AI actually stores and models this information. Because I think the traditional SEO crowd often pictures this as just another Google index.
Oh, yeah, they do.
But it's fundamentally different, isn't it?
Precisely. And this is where we have to introduce the concept of entity strength within a knowledge graph.
Entity strength.
Yeah. You see, AI systems, they do not read a business's website and say, oh, what a lovely team photo. They must be great.
Right. They don't experience the web temporally or visually like we do.
No, not at all. Instead, they build massive multidimensional vector spaces. They build internal representations, and these are called entities.
So an entity is essentially a node in a massive network.
Exactly. Connected to other nodes by lines or edges that represent relationships.
I used to think of it like a detective building a profile on a suspect. Pinning clues to a corkboard with red string.
I like that analogy.
But looking at the developer docs, it's a lot more complex than a corkboard. It's about semantic density, right?
Very much so.
Like the more high-quality data points that point to a specific entity, and the tighter the semantic relationship between those points, the higher the probability that the neural network will actually retrieve that entity.
When a user's prompt activates that specific region of the vector space, exactly. That is a much more accurate way to look at it.
So it's all about mathematical probability.
What's fascinating here is that some entities have incredibly strong, well-defined mathematical representations in that space.
Because they appear frequently and clearly across many different authoritative sources.
Yes. The AI's natural language processing models have a very high confidence score regarding who they are and what they do.
While others have very weak or fragmented representations.
Exactly. Maybe there's only one data point with no semantic edges connecting it to anything else in the knowledge graph.
But hold on, let me push back on that for a second. Let's look at traditional search dynamics.
Okay, let's do it.
Google's whole foundation was built on PageRank, right? The idea that if high-authority websites link to you, you are important.
That was the golden rule, yeah.
So if I own a business and I have a functional, modern website with a high domain authority and plenty of backlinks, shouldn't I automatically be a strong entity for an LLM like Claude or ChatGPT?
You would think so.
I mean, a link is a link, right? Why isn't traditional SEO enough for the AI?
Well, the architecture of a generative AI model values information completely differently than a traditional search crawler.
Oh, so.
A traditional search engine uses links as a proxy for authority to rank a specific URL. But an LLM doesn't care about ranking your URL.
Right, it doesn't.
No, it cares about understanding the text surrounding your business name. A backlink on a high-authority site is relatively useless to an LLM if the text surrounding that link doesn't provide rich, descriptive context about what your business actually does.
Oh, wow. So just buying naked backlinks is useless now.
Pretty much. The absolute strength of a business's internal representation, its entity strength, is what directly controls how often it makes it into an AI's answer.
So if your traditional SEO strategy was just buying links without rich contextual text, you're essentially a ghost to the LLM.
You are. The AI requires independent descriptive verification across a diverse ecosystem of data to believe that your entity is mathematically strong enough to generate in a response.
So you know the AI isn't just randomly throwing darts at a phone book, and it isn't just counting backlinks either.
Right. It needs a robust entity with a high MLP confidence score.
Which naturally leads us to the mechanics, what actually feeds that score? How do successful businesses build that visibility?
Let's break it down. There are specific pillars here.
Let's invent a hypothetical business to ground this. We'll call him Bob. Bob is a fantastic local plumber.
Okay, Bob the plumber.
5-star service, totally beloved by the community. How does Bob become an entity that the AI actually cares about?
Well, the first pillar is the sheer volume of unstructured data mentions.
Volume.
Yeah, and to be clear, this is not about Bob having one perfectly coded web page. It's about the breadth of his digital footprint.
So we're talking about mentions in industry articles, local directories, customer reviews on third-party sites.
Social platforms, trade publications, all of it. The AI needs to see Bob's plumbing being discussed from multiple angles, in multiple formats, across entirely different domains.
I see. So if Bob just has a great website but isn't mentioned anywhere else, his vector is incredibly weak. He needs volume. But wait, if Bob just spams the internet with his business name, like say he hires someone to just blast his name onto 1,000 random forum posts, won't the AI pick him up then?
Not if the information is messy or contradictory, and that introduces the second pillar, which is the critical mechanism of consistency.
Consistency, okay.
Let's say Bob has 500 glowing reviews on Yelp. That is great volume. But let's look at the data structure. On Yelp, he is Bob's Plumbing.
Right.
But on his 1998-era website, he is Robert's Pipe Fitting and Repair. And on his LinkedIn, he listed himself years ago as a freelance pipe fitter.
Oh, here's where it gets really interesting, because you can look at this through the lens of a mathematical game of telephone.
Yes, that's exactly it.
In natural language processing, words are converted into numbers, right? Vectors.
Yeah.
So if an AI model reads Bob's Plumbing on Yelp, that creates a specific vector grouping.
Exactly.
But then it reads freelance pipe fitter on LinkedIn. Those vectors point in slightly different directions. The semantic meaning is getting totally scattered.
You nailed it. By the time it processes all this conflicting data, the model's mathematical confidence in what Bob actually does drops significantly. The AI literally doesn't know what to do with him.
Wow. So by being inconsistent, Bob is basically fragmenting his own entity in the vector space.
That is a perfect technical analogy. Generative AI thrives on high probability confidence. If it has conflicting data points, its confidence score in that specific entity plummets.
So when I ask for a reliable local plumber, the model isn't going to take a risk on a fragmented entity like Bob.
No, it will simply move on and recommend Bob's competitor. Let's call her Alice.
Okay, Alice's Plumbing.
Because Alice's Plumbing is a perfectly straight story. The model will choose the business that says residential plumber consistently on their site, on their socials, in their press releases, and in their directory listings.
It makes complete sense from a probability standpoint. So Alice beats Bob because she has volume, and her vectors are tightly aligned through consistency.
Right.
But surely it's not just about repeating the word plumber endlessly. How does the AI know she's a good or authoritative plumber?
That requires the next layer of the architecture. Contextual relevance.
Contextual relevance. So appearing everywhere isn't the goal.
No, appearing in the right semantic neighborhoods is. The text immediately surrounding the business's name matters immensely for how the knowledge graph maps the entity.
Okay, give me an example.
If Alice's Plumbing is consistently mentioned in local home service blogs discussing water heater installations, or in community forum threads specifically about fixing burst pipes, That creates a massive, highly specific associative link.
Oh, I get it. The NLP models are mapping the words burst pipes and water heater in incredibly close proximity to the token Alice's plumbing.
Yes. Compare that to a business that is only ever mentioned in generic local business directories alongside, the local dry cleaner and the pizza shop.
Right, the AI knows they are a business, but the contextual signal, the semantic neighborhood, is just incredibly weak.
Exactly. There are no strong edges connecting them to the actual concept of plumbing expertise.
Which brings us to how authority is actually transferred in this space. Looking at the research papers on entity association, it's not just about the words next to your name, it's about the other entities next to your name.
Spot on. Pillar 4. We are talking about inheriting authority through known entities.
Inheriting authority.
If Alice's Plumbing is mentioned in an article alongside the National Plumbers Union or a major regional housing authority, the AI recognizes those highly established entities.
Because Alice is situated in the same semantic cluster as these massive trusted nodes.
Exactly. The knowledge graph naturally transfers some of that established mathematical weight over to her.
It's success by association. If my business is mentioned in the same paragraph as a major university or a prominent industry body, the AI's attention mechanism calculates that my entity must be highly relevant to that industry. But what about time? Because everything we've talked about so far sounds really static. How does the model account for the fact that businesses change or close or pivot?
This is where we have to discuss the fifth pillar, retrieval augmented generation, or ARAG.
RAGs, yeah, we see that term everywhere lately.
It's the architecture used by systems like Perplexity or ChatGPT when it actively browses the web. ARAG models actively pull in live data to ground their answers and prevent hallucinations.
Okay.
For these systems, the recency of your digital footprint is vital. If Bob the Plumber hasn't updated his website since 2019, and the last article written about him was in 2020, well, his data is going to carry a heavily decayed weight in our AirAg system.
That makes sense.
Businesses with recently published content, fresh reviews, and recent press mentions are prioritized because the retrieval system uses timestamps as a massive relevancy signal.
Okay, let's step back and look at the reality this architecture creates. We've established that the system demands volume, strict semantic consistency, highly relevant contextual neighborhoods, association with known entities, and fresh data for RE systems.
It is a very clear mechanical recipe.
It really is. But looking at the SEO research in our sources, it perfectly explains a tragedy happening in the local business world right now.
Yeah, it's pretty sad.
So many genuinely fantastic, highly competent businesses, like our hypothetical Bob, are essentially ghost towns when it comes to AI visibility.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is a harsh reality. You can be the absolute best in your city, but if your digital footprint is not optimized for machine parsing, you simply do not exist to the AI.
So if a local business is incredible at what they do, but they just rely on a beautiful website and word of mouth, are they basically invisible to the AI?
Yes, they are entirely invisible. Let's look at the specific ways competent businesses unwittingly sabotage themselves.
Okay.
First, as we just touched on, they rely entirely on the build it and they will come philosophy. They have a website, maybe some traditional word of mouth, but zero digital breadth.
Right, and word of mouth happens in the physical world, or in private group chats that the LLMs absolutely cannot scrape.
Exactly.
If it isn't digitized and published publicly, the AI's training data never sees it. What's another way they sabotage their entity strength?
By using what we call generic corporate speak. A lot of business websites use flowery, vague language. They talk about providing innovative solutions or synergizing paradigms or delivering excellence.
Oh, the absolute worst. I mean, it means nothing to a human, but I imagine it's even worse for a machine.
It is functionally useless for natural language processing. The AI's extraction models are looking for specific claims, services, and verifiable facts to populate their knowledge graphs.
So an LLM cannot extract a factual service from innovative solutions.
No. If the content does not make clear specific claims like, we install copper piping in commercial buildings, the AI simply cannot categorize the entity. It has no hard data to map.
That makes total sense. Now, there's another technical piece in the developer docs that we really need to tackle, structured data, specifically schema markup.
Ah, yes, schema.
We know schema is important for getting those nice, rich snippets on a traditional Google search results page, but why does a generative LLM care about schema? Doesn't the AI just read the text on the page?
Well, when an LLM crawls a standard web page, its attention mechanism has to distribute computational weight across the entire layout. The navigation bars, the footers, the random text.
Just trying to infer context and figure out what the core subject is.
Exactly. It is essentially making highly educated guesses based on text vectors.
So it has to work hard to figure out that the string of numbers at the bottom of the page is actually a phone number and not just like a random product code.
Exactly. Schema markup bypasses that entirely. It is a specific vocabulary of code you inject into your site that acts as a direct data feed to the machine. It explicitly declares, this page represents a local business. The business name is Alice's Plumbing. The exact latitude and longitude are here. The specific service area is this.
It feeds directly into the structured data extraction layer of the AI.
Yes, there is no vector inference required.
Yeah.
It is a direct key-value pair injection into the knowledge graph.
It hands the machine the exact answers on a silver platter, which obviously spikes the mathematical confidence score of the entity.
Precisely.
So if I'm Bob the plumber, and I am incredible at my job, but my website is old, I have no schema markup, my LinkedIn says pipe fitter, and my recent reviews are locked in private Facebook groups.
Then you are functionally invisible to this entire ecosystem.
I really am.
Yes, you are. The AI is not acting as a critic of your actual real-world work. It has never tasted the food at a restaurant or inspected the pipes Bob fixed.
It's purely judging how well your digital footprint is structured for its neural network to ingest and map.
That's exactly it.
That is staggering to think about. Because consumer behavior is shifting so rapidly, we're moving from an era where we typed keywords into a search bar and sifted through 10 blue links.
To an era where we just ask an AI for the answer.
Right. And if your business isn't mathematically optimized to be part of the answer, you are going to vanish for an entire generation of consumers.
Which brings us to the research papers in our stack dealing with time and synthetic data.
Yeah, let's get into that, because knowing that businesses are either actively building these strong vector representations or just fading into the background, we have to look at the timeline.
Right. What happens to strong entities like Alice's Plumbing over the next few months and years?
Yeah.
They experience what researchers refer to as a compounding synthetic data loop. And this is perhaps the most critical mechanism for any listener to understand right now.
Okay, let's walk through the loop. Alice's Plumbing has a strong entity, so ChatGPT and Claude start recommending her today when locals search for a plumber.
Right. She wins the initial probability calculation. Now, think about who uses AI for content generation.
Oh, everyone. Local journalists, blog writers, directory curators, industry researchers.
Exactly. So a writer for a local community blog asks Claude to help write an article about the top 3 plumbers in the city. The AI, drawing on its established knowledge graph, spits out Alice's Plumbing as the top result.
Oh, I see the loop. The writer then takes that output and publishes that article on the live web.
Precisely. They publish the blog post featuring Alice. And what happens in 6 months when OpenAI or Anthropic scrape the web to train their next generation model?
The web crawler finds that brand new article.
Exactly. The crawler ingests that new article and sees Alice's Plumbing mentioned again in a new, highly relevant, authoritative context.
Which creates a brand new, incredibly strong data point in the vector space.
The model trains on its own previous output, which further strengthens Alice's representation in the internal knowledge graph. It is a completely self-reinforcing mathematical loop.
Visibility creates mentions. Those mentions become new training data. And that training data creates even more visibility.
Exactly. This raises an important question about the cost of inaction for late adopters.
It really is the ultimate rich-get-richer dynamic. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're in the answer today, you are practically guaranteed to be in the answer tomorrow.
Because the internet is literally rewriting itself based on what the AI said yesterday. The vector weight for Alice just approaches an absolute certainty.
So businesses that are absent from these early AI training cycles, the ones ignoring their entity strength today, they're going to find it significantly harder to break into that loop later on.
The digital moats are being dug right now. The established entities are only getting stronger. Their mathematical roots are growing deeper into the foundation of the AI's architecture.
It's not just about getting some foot traffic from a prompt today. It's about being baked into the foundational knowledge base of GPT-5, GPT-6, and beyond.
If you wait 5 years to care about this, you are not just starting from zero. You're starting from a massive deficit.
Because your competitors have a 5-year compounding advantage of synthetic data loops in the machine's memory. Breaking a heavily established entity's grip on an AI recommendation would require an enormous, almost impossible amount of signal generation to overcome their historical vector weight.
Absolutely.
So what does this all mean? We've gone deep into the architecture here today, from vector spaces and natural language confidence scores, to RG systems and compounding synthetic loops.
We really covered a lot of ground.
If you are listening to this, the practical takeaway is that building AI visibility is not a quick SEO hack.
No, it's not.
You can't just flip a switch, buy a bunch of spammy backlinks, or stuff keywords into a footer to game the system. It requires a fundamental shift in how you manage your digital presence.
You have to audit how you are described across the entire web.
You have to hunt down those semantic inconsistencies, the pipe fitter versus the plumber, and align your vectors.
You need to implement structured schema data to feed the machine directly.
And you need to build a sustained, broad presence in relevant digital neighborhoods. You're not just building a website for a human to read anymore. You are engineering a sustained mathematical signal over time for a machine to map.
And if you do that, you align yourself with how the architecture actually functions, rather than hoping a neural network magically infers how great your real-world business is.
Exactly.
But I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, building on that compounding synthetic data loop we just discussed.
Okay.
If AI engines increasingly feed on their own generated outputs to train their future iterations, and those systems mathematically reinforce the exact same strong, highly visible businesses in an endless feedback loop, well, will we eventually reach a point where AI models inadvertently create a completely impenetrable monopoly of established businesses?
Wow.
Will the structure of the knowledge graph become so overwhelmingly locked in by historical entity strength that it becomes functionally impossible for a brilliant, innovative new startup to ever be discovered by the machine?